Obusofo nanim say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu enra in so the reporter efa Bawku conflict ekoso no ode ho report na kopi mu akra ode na no disem ekoto His Excellency John Dramani Mahama anim say dem nso meyem hwehwemu no dem nso mahuni so the report ekoye an report na kire say Bawku no the rightful chief for Bawku no Azigri Abogrago Azoka ono anachese obetimi edi ehene ewo Bawku na the rightful chief na da kusase traditional area na no chese Otumfuo Osei Tutu di nsemwe etudwa de adesrede etoe Nayiri anim on di Mampurugu traditional area no anim sasemi a ehya ase no between kusase ene Mampurusi kusase ne Mampurusi na Bawku nemum yepedo obedi Bawku na so eho na asem no wono eti kusase fo ne say omo de no ene bedi Bawku na so ana Mampurugu for so say yes ye de Nayiri no ono ne bedi Bawku na so but His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu kwatena ase no ana o say Azigri Abogrago Azoka ono ne da kusase traditional area na no ono ene the rightful chief for Bawku na asem e ba abotena mafo bebrani age because no obi ehwe sa asumdwe beba between these two parties enuti no bra Otumfuo sha ase de asumdwe nsem e ba abonten de no matoto yie no obi ani age ekopem se adu report ekoma His Excellency John Dramani Mahama se menso me reporter me da bani se me no me yem hwehwe mu wie Azigri Abogrago Azoka ono enso ohina odi Bawku nanim edi bibia toto yie.
The final resolution of the Bawku matters requires that Mr. Seydou Abagari be recalled to Nalerigu by the Nayiri to be reassigned to play another traditional role at the palace of the Nayiri assisted by the state. Alternatively, he may choose to stay in Bawku as an ordinary citizen of the community, but not to pose as Bawku Naba. The final recommendation, Mr. President, I recommend that my brother, the Nayiri, accepts the laws as presently constituting Azigri Abogrago Azoka as the chief of Bawku and head chief of the Kusasi traditional area. We chiefs, no matter how exalted, do not live above the Constitution of Ghana and the laws duly enacted and affirmed by the courts. Accordingly, the laws which recognizes Azigri Abogrago Azoka must be enforced by the government of the Republic of Ghana until changed in accordance with the 1992 Constitution or reviewed by the Supreme Court of Ghana. The government must enforce the laws and deal sternly with any person challenging the lawful authority of the Abogrago Azoka. This is critical to the restoration and maintenance of peace in Kusasi traditional area. I wish to thank you, Mr. President, and your predecessor for reposing such confidence in me and tasking me with the mediation of this conflict with a view to finding a lasting solution. I also want to thank the Nayiri and the Bawku Naba for their efforts relative to this mediation process. The various chiefs or heads of various communities whom I met in the area who also participated in this endeavor deserve positive commendation. I have come to the conclusion that the path to a lasting resolution coincides with the enforcement of the current position of the law by the laws of Ghana and by the Constitution enacted in 1992 and by the position of the Supreme Court that the matter should never be litigated before it again. Azigri Abogrago Azoka is the lawful chief of Bawku and the paramount chief of Kusasi traditional area. He has been a member of the National House of Chiefs for about 40 years. He has been duly gazetted. His right to rule should not be disturbed, save through a judicial and constitutional recognized process, and which, as already indicated, appears, if any, a review of the pronouncement of the Supreme Court of the Republic of Ghana stated herein. If the pronouncement of the Supreme Court appears not clear enough, remedy may be sought, if available, for clarification of the same by the Supreme Court. Either way, Bawku and its environs will be assured of sustainable and enduring peace. Mr. President, thank you very much for your attention.
Na se me ba abonte se bibia ye kama obi ebo Otumfuo abaso se de wo ye ne de eye pa na de teni sa no peye ye te wo ani se asem bi ba abonte se Nayiri on da Mampurugu traditional area no o se asema Otumfuo Osei Tutu da babonte no onye ntum saa asomdwe nsem na na se ni mediation na obeye no a ose eye abugri azoka no ono ana chese eye the rightful chief of Bawku no ose ono Nayiri the overlord of the Mampugu traditional area also onye ntum odini nsem we ni na babonte chese wa twegu nkata so ababonte mbeka mu nsem kakra e de achewa unso wetie de ekoso going through the Mampugu traditional council and ode bro or say Bawku chieftaincy dispute Nayiri formally rejects purported mediation report and any attempt at government enforcement of the so-called recommendations. Or say, so we are you Otumfuo Osei Tutu de na oda ba no kra na His Excellency de na enne ye hwenu so so de betu dwa no eno so kra no so de ba bonten kra na onyi ntum wey any reasons. Or say, any reasons or de ba bonten the first one. Or say the purported report and recommendations in question do not constitute a valid mediation, and any attempt to present it as binding or to seek government enforcement is legally untenable, procedurally flawed, and constitutionally impermissible. Brofunu modu. Chatanise mo kenane say, die aye na na de bediano no, die aye Otumfuo Osei Tutu pesa oye. Any His Excellency John Dramani Mahama person or no. So in negu senima traditionally enya no kra na se emfamra kwam and I say so what the call a fan say a yamamre nsemu a ankoye ana fe so de ba emremu nso a da bi amfa anko ne se ne wase ekono infuso bi ababa bi Nayiri e ka che Ghana for no o se da bi infuso koso aba bi entino jituma enyeye. The second reason is say Otumfuo expressly described his role as that of a mediator and not an arbitrator. Notwithstanding this, the document purports to pass judgment and to prescribe measures for enforcement, an act which is wholly inconsistent with the nature, limits, and essence of mediation. Or say, a year His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu ni dwumade ni say oyentem ginafo nemom eni kwan so otimi pass judgment. So oyentem ginafo a oni wo kwan so otimi pass judgment. Nanso Otumfuo atra mediation abaye arbitrator a pass judgment say eye azugri azoko ono ana dey say oye the rightful chief of Bawku. Let just say one be mediation, one be mediator, nemo be arbitrator, or pass judgment. Eni kwan so say Otumfuo Osei Tutu si oye mediation and as oye mediator there eni kwa so otimi pass judgment name on peace no de ba not to pass a judgment is same modu. And the third one, or say despite repeated and formal requests by my mediation team, no terms of reference were ever provided to govern the mediation process. Contrary to the expectations that both the former president Nana Akufo-Addo and the current president John Dramani Mahama would have clearly indicated what these terms of reference were. Se uti eye Nayiri asema waka o se bra asem no sha sese e koso no sha se ombedi asem no eye reference terms of reference just no mom de gu akwama no mdi omudi di asem ni na no ebien ho a chese eye former president Nana Akufo-Addo any His Excellency John Dramani Mahama omuma ni mediation team ni ya awe omuni mo hwe terms bi omuni mo hwe chese ase no mo na ekoso na se omayi eye Nayiri no ni mediation team na se omayi omasi nchen kakra and as if they've already planned everything no mo keka omonsem. That is what Nayiri can. The fourth point, I say I am compelled to ask what manner of mediation permits a mediator to unilaterally reach determinations and call for their enforcement without first affording the parties an opportunity to be heard on the reasoning. Chese ute Nayiri asema o say after sanka His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu e plan na ase odine na gina to ni na ba wi ye say opese eje azugri azoko na eye the overlord of eye boko no na wasanka odikan frɛ eye the two parties Nayiri ene eye azugri azoko na nko mtena se na nko mka asem no ono no de na agye ne ba se me no me ba abonten ade me bekani ugina ho sen wo so ugina ho sen o se His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu wan kan kire ni omumu bia se adwene we na me de ba abonten se me ba be ma eye azugri azoko aba be ye the overlord of Bawku o so no wante onim ho hwe do hu ya ne se His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu aba abonten abeka se eye azugri azoko ene ye the overlord of Bawku ono so de ogituma enye ye because one man anya we said o de ba abonten ni asem na no ayden now go to the next point. Also at the 5th point, at no point were the parties invited to engage with, comment on, or respond to the conclusions said to have been reached. If any deliberations occurred, they were conducted entirely without the knowledge, participation, or consent of Mamprugu. Say them di kankaya no, and no even was able to repeat what I say no. Asem na course na nkasa no, ebe na wie ye no. Otumfuo His Excellency taking a decision no wa ma eye Mamprugufuo enhu se me decision ni domu ya ne se wa bedu Accra ne report no waka se eye azugri azoko ene eye the overlord of Bawku ona oye the rightful chief of Bawku no munya be wandi kan trom no san ko munya eye foresight of what is coming to happen no more prepare but sir NC the 6th point I see a mediation report, properly so called, must faithfully reflect the positions advanced by the parties, identify areas of agreement and disagreement, and record any consensual outcomes achieved through facilitated dialogue. As a man Nayiri can say report na His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu abonten say or kase no kra anka wasanke watena say analysis ewu baby a ntiase wo ani baby a ntiase ni baby asumdwe wo baby asumdwe ni not take those positions no one by one and sakran with me the conclusions about mountain but according to Nayiri no when we say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu efa sa kwan no so otimi identify where agreement no wo baby ntiase ni baby ntiase wo baby asumdwe o say ohu ni say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu when to sana mono one fasa kwan so. The 7th point, I say it cannot lawfully or legitimately substitute the mediator's personal opinions, recommendations, or decisions for the negotiated positions of the parties. I say you come rema say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu mediation no the judgment no da ba bonten no eni kwan say follow the no and a judgment was say ba bonten no eni kwan say follow the no mediator no edaba bonten no eni kwan say follow the eno obeka aye no dabi because he is a mediator not an arbitrator omom twen nsem no ma ye Nayiri ne de sem no moduo ye nim sansum duaba no dabi Nayiri say no investigation and as mediation and koye kra anko ne say no pair no it's in the reasons now I'm good to know 7th reason I'm the buy no the reasons name akoma 20 8th fair reason is to do so is to abandon mediation and to assume an adjudicative role for which no jurisdiction exists. Say na me kan no as a repetition no as a dozo the best what chen say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu ndwumedi obeye no oye mediator onya arbitrator it only who kwan say o take a decision a pass judgment say eye azugri azoko ono na ye the rightful chief for Bawku dabi oye mediator o hwe say asumdwe beba like o come afanu mienu na atomo ase but as we dey wakama ntasaba wasa pass judgment ato abonten a judgment no corona Nayiri no no onimu asem ni mediation team no enimu asem no sha asem man fa to onim say Nayiri wan kopiem wo eye menshada dabi eni mediation team na koye a decision ni ba abonten ko na ni mediation team no munya we into I say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu ni position was a mediator not an arbitrator. It's only kwan so pass judgment. The 9th reason I say the recommendations contained in that report therefore amount to a unilateral determination imposed without due process, in clear violation of the odi alteram partem principle and the foundational rules of natural justice. Chese Ochirema, His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, oye mediator, na onya arbitrator, nwetima pass judgment no. Ekutia the national, and I said the natural judgment, and I said ne rightful way was said judgment no faso no. Am faso sa because we mediator, onya arbitrator. It will pass judgment na. And chira mediation process now be ye no. Emani ndimu. Asemo. The 11th reason, or say I am further constrained to ask whether the established principles of mediation have now been altered to permit a mediator to ground recommendations on selective reliance on committee reports and court decisions rather than on the promised traditional consultative and facilitative approach. It was in Nisimo Kenan says, say you his Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu mediator. No, it's my pass judgment in there, and a question mark da home. Because mediator no kwan so pass judgment. Anko ya arbitrator there fine, but when mediator ne there question mark down because mediator no kwan so to me pass judgment. 12 reason. I said the report is replete with factual inaccuracies, personal assertions attributed to the mediator, and a manifest imbalance in favor of one party's narrative, while almost entirely omitting Mampuku's case. Ochema, Osei Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu wakudi one side, wakudi gusasi for one side, and the way Mampuku for Nezin chain. Osei come and say when Mampuku for narrative, I'm going to some of the back, let me say Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. As wakudi say a yakusasi for the non kwa, and that pass judgment. It will Ochema. As His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II bias, according to the report, as we bias bisano. According to Nayiri, the overlord of the Mampugu traditional area, Ninsema or the Babontino. Yet was one. Also for the avoidance of doubt, it is entirely false to suggest that I ever agreed to the continued recognition of an intima as Bawku na Aba. Also on jin tumu nenjin tumu china. Say azugri azoko. Enebe the chief for Bawku dabi on jin tumu. Because the reason is not there bano. Etino or jitumi enne eno china enye. Also it is equally disturbing that both parties to the mediation were absent at the presentation of this so-called report, which is now being portrayed as having enjoyed their acceptance. I said, Bryce, Excellency Otumfuo Osei to the report no kono. Na Mampuku for the kusasi for na two parties ne bien ho. No mumbienu nen ho. No mumbienu representatives bien ho. It's a semnojituma enye ye. One must reasonably ask why duly mandated representatives of the parties were denied the opportunity to comment, an opportunity that could have lent legitimacy to any claimed endorsement, while other organizations were selectively invited instead. It was also bisa say adenti ana parties ni mienu na anko piem ewo eye reporter nice Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II ede ba abonten no adno mienu na anko piem. Say no kra say ampa say the of a kwan of us no no kra adeti no mienu na anko piem either eye mampurugufo na say kusasi for adno anko piem ho, or say it is a question to be asked. To say that I feel betrayed, disappointed and deeply hurt would be a grave understatement. Hey, asumdwe Bawku ayepe left and right obi e kanedi o say asem machine even so case we head to cry na understatement we hear more words than even hurt and disappointed in the mediation process now, of course no. I am further alarmed by statements attributed to His Excellency the President, suggesting that government intends to issue a definitive position within 24 hours based on this report. I say no to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. I was also in the final report about Bontin based on Otumfuor's report not about Bontin, and also on Jintum, because report and answer a solution now His Excellency John Dramani Mahama the Bontin. It's not His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. Need so. And they be take a decision and you know so jituma enye ye and to take His Excellency John Dramani Mahama dio say His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II dio nini na no ojituma enye ye. Such an approach respectfully will not advance the peace we all seek. I urge the President to engage fully with all parties and with the mediator before taking any action founded upon this deeply flawed document. Or say, it's in this about Montini Nano. Or say, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Say a mediation process now, of course, no such review BM. And so much jatum, and so crown maybe about Bontabe Casa. Because I did too many because mediation process now, ye. A mistake be a baby. Me can make any tree, but me can at try be a coso baby. Mistake akoswo baby enu no gituma enye it answer kwana His Excellency John Dramani Mahama baba bonta be kasa no only kan nye review etna se enye hyehyɛ answer kwana no baba bonta be kasa because ono Nayiri no kra de say His Excellency e be kasa based on the reporter His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu da baba bonta ono Nayiri ni de onjintum the overlord of the Mampugu traditional area onjintum. Also the content of the report appears calculated to cast Mampugu in an unjust and unfavorable light, notwithstanding our consistent good faith and commitment to peace. As Mampugu for Nekadomo penny asumdue. Next, we come and report to the Mampugu for Kojina baby or Mumpe and then sound of Mope. Because report and cannot correct, and it said Mampugu for Kojina baby and ye. And it needs me for Sumdue and Mane and Machna. The last point was I will not remain passive in the face of what appears to be a carefully orchestrated process, conceived long before the commencement of mediation and designed to prejudice a young Mampugu. As someone can say, so we should process now, or see process no, answer decision by Babon, na or my calculating decision out what the dada. No minimum there, yes, Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, no minimum the candidate. The mediation process was just a near need to deceive people. But no minimum damba ayos Otumfuo Osei Tutu II be candidate da no nim before say me process no be sha ase no kwa no asema Nayiri kan say no Otumfuo nim so ba bonta be ka say azukra zoko on ba be the overlord of Bawku traditional area no nim. It's mediation process na there ase His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II shara de be da man for keke say Nayiri eka nemom sanko follow mediation process as a mediator na dia anka judgment we nyesa na baba bontin eti way any ensama Nayiri the overlord of the Mampugu traditional area da baba bontin monkafra sami ensama tintintin nanso sa ana Nayiri da baba bontin sa asumdwe nsem His Excellency Otumfuo Osei Tutu II Babontin or no Nayiri, the overlord of the Mampugu traditional area, or Jitum and Ne and Watchna in ye, ko pim say as 7 besa so. Nasa can ye no, or no Nayiri, the overlord of the Mampugu traditional area, or Jituma in ye. I say, Joy TV News. Michelle Sober like cannot subscribe and share. We were hoping Sanka Semian Otumfuo Osei Tutu II His Excellency the Babontin day. They are some job but once and for all. Nanso I say Joy TV News once again. Like it, subscribe it, and share.